On the night of 5th March 1770, the streets of Boston were tense with anger. For years, British soldiers had been stationed in the city to enforce unpopular taxes passed by the Parliament. To many colonists, the red-coated troops were not protectors, they were occupiers. Arguments between soldiers and civilians were common. But that evening, near the customs house on King Street, insults turned into chaos. A crowd gathered around a small group of British soldiers. Snowballs were thrown, some packed with ice, pieces of wood, and oyster shells followed. The soldiers were shouted at, mocked, and threatened. More troops arrived under the command of Captain Thomas Preston. Then, suddenly, shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, 5 colonists were dead or dying, including Crispus Attucks, a dock worker often remembered as the first martyr of the American Revolution. Boston erupted in fury. Patriot leaders quickly framed the event as proof of British cruelty. Within days, engravings like the famous one by Paul Revere spread across the colonies, showing disciplined British soldiers firing mercilessly into helpless crowds. The incident became known as the Boston Massacre. Many demanded immediate revenge, but instead of mob justice, Boston's leaders chose something unexpected. They chose a trial. Captain Preston and 8 British soldiers were arrested and charged with murder. Emotions in the city ran dangerously high. The victims were buried in a massive funeral procession attended by thousands. And yet, when the trial began later that year, one man stepped forward to defend the soldiers. His name was John Adams. Adams was a patriot who opposed British policies. Many of his own neighbors believed the soldiers deserved death. Taking their case risked destroying his reputation. But Adams believed something more dangerous than the soldiers was at stake: justice itself. Captain Preston's trial began in October 1770. Witnesses were called, but their stories clashed. Some insisted Preston had ordered his men to fire. Others testified that no such command was given. The jury ultimately acquitted Preston. Then came the trial of the 8 soldiers in November 1770. Inside the courtroom, Adams carefully dismantled the prosecution's claims. Witnesses described the crowd's aggression: snowballs, clubs, and shouted threats. One soldier, Hugh Montgomery, had been knocked down before firing his weapon. Adams argued that the soldiers feared for their lives. Facts are stubborn things, he told the jury. After long deliberation, the verdict came. 6 soldiers were acquitted. 2, Hugh Montgomery and Matthew Kilroy, were found guilty of manslaughter, not murder. Instead of execution, they were branded on the thumb and released. The decision shocked many colonists, but it also proved something powerful. Even in a city burning with anger, the rule of law had survived. The Boston Massacre became one of the sparks that fueled the American Revolution. But the trial became a reminder that justice must stand before rage. Years later, John Adams would say defending those soldiers was one of the most important services he